Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 14, Episode 23. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Friday, Steelers Nation, as we get ready for Week 2 of the NFL. The Philadelphia Eagles, the other Keystone State team, winning over the Minnesota Vikings last night on Thursday Night Football. Pittsburgh, of course, will have to wait until Monday night to take on the Cleveland Browns at Acrisure Stadium. Pittsburgh 0-1, Cleveland 1-0. Dave, a little bit different Friday show. Won't go into a full Browns preview and make our picks. That'll happen for Monday's show, but still plenty for us to discuss. How you doing?
Yeah, look, full slate of football watching on the slate this next few days. Obviously, with college football on Saturday, and we get to sit around and watch as many games as possible on Sunday with the Steelers playing on Monday night. It feels good to be out of the Steelers 49ers, all 22 tape now, and have started. I've made it through, I don't know, about 3/4 of the offensive tape of the Browns from the Bengals game and a little bit of the defense here and there. So I'm happy to have some different film to look at for sure here, but definitely an interesting week coming up for the Steelers. Not only 0-1 at this point, but 0-1 and facing a 1-0 Browns team that had an impressive win over the Bengals last week in Week 1, and the Steelers going to be without a couple of players, as we've kind of already figured as well.
Yeah, we'll lead off that with that news here, Dave. Just before that, one thing we'll keep for our normal Friday show, we'll talk to a Browns beat writer, our friend Scott Petrak of the Chronicle Telegram, Medina Gazette, and BrownZone.com. So we'll have a conversation with him in a little bit to get his perspective on the Browns' big Week 1 win and the Week 2 matchup against Pittsburgh. But Dave, you're right. Let's jump right on into the flurry of roster moves that Pittsburgh made yesterday. Most notably, although it was entirely expected, Cam Hayward officially going to injured reserve, meaning he's going to miss at least the next month, although we expect it to be closer to 2 months and probably a return around Thanksgiving would probably be the timeline on him. 8 weeks. He had his surgery officially on Thursday. Replacing him on the 53-man roster was wide receiver Des Fitzpatrick. He was called up from the practice squad. He had a good summer, especially on special teams, and with Deontay Johnson injured and unlikely to play in this one, Fitzpatrick can help potentially fill that void as well. Some practice squad moves, bringing back cornerback Luke Barku and running back Greg Bell, releasing veteran cornerback Anthony Brown, the former Cowboy, and placing Josiah Scott on the practice squad injured list. And then one additional move on Friday morning, they signed cornerback Kalen Barnes to the practice squad, who they worked out, I believe, earlier this week or last week, to help replace Brown and Scott, no longer being part of the team. Scott on that practice squad injured list. So a bunch of moves there, a lot of practice squad stuff, but the big 53-man roster moves right now. Hayward to IR, Des Fitzpatrick promoted from the practice squad to the 53-man roster.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting now with Fitzpatrick on the 53-man roster. What does this mean as far as game day helmets go? Fitzpatrick, I think we noted during the preseason, did some nice things and really stuck out on special teams there as well. So with Deontay Johnson obviously going to be sidelined with that hamstring injury on Monday night, do you dress all wide receivers, or do you put because Fitzpatrick probably has a little bit more special teams worthiness than Gunnar Olszewski? Does Gunnar remain an inactive player this week? So that'll be something to look for this week. And I guess really the only other thing to maybe kind of look for is what happens Monday afternoon. Do they elevate Braden Fehoko to the active-inactive roster on Monday afternoon and then put him in a helmet for that game Monday night? And in turn, does that mean like somebody like Armon Watts does not dress? So I think really the only mystery at this point, well, there's really, I think, three mysteries. Who is the wide receiver that's inactive? Who is or do they promote Braden Fehoko and dress him on Monday night and sit down a guy like maybe Armon Watts? And then the other question would be, I think, who gets the helmet over, say, Chandon Sullivan and Desmond King?
Yeah, those are good questions all around. I don't know where they're going to go for all those things. Again, to bring up and elevate somebody like Fehoko would make sense, giving the run-heavy nature and run-capable nature of the Browns, rushing for over 200 yards against Cincinnati in week number 1. But we'll have to see there. Yeah, with the wide receivers, I mean, you call up Fitzpatrick. Deontay's not going to. Could they all be active and just not Deontay if he doesn't go to IR? Is that a potential avenue?
Well, I guess, they net. It's not like one of them went to IR and they already had six wide receivers on the roster. So they have 7 now. So what other position goes inactive? Because you got to at least, based on, depending on what happens with Fehoko, you're going to have either 5 or 6 inactives for this game. So, we already know Mason Rudolph, probably Dylan Cook, Deontay Johnson. That's 3 right there that are likely to be inactive. So where do who are your other 2 or 3 in the case of Fehoko being elevated?
Yeah, you think a corner would be a 4, and the 5th might be harder to determine.
Right.
So, yeah, all good questions there, but Fitzpatrick getting the call up. He's got a little bit of NFL experience, too. Won't be his first rodeo inside a game that counts, but
he's probably more position versatile than Gunner, too. And look, I mean, Gunner gives you a lot of effort in the blocking aspect, but you probably want Fitzpatrick out there,
Maybe. I mean, I think Gunner can wear a ton of hats. Backup return guy. They can play inside and even play outside in a pinch. I don't know how much inside, slot capable Fitzpatrick can be, but we'll see. And Miles Boykin was reportedly in a boot earlier this week, but he's not on the injury report, and so I expect him to be able to play in this one. But it's probably a good time to segue into the injury situation for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Their first injury report came out Thursday because of the Monday night game, and so we're working with less information than we usually would be on a Friday episode of the show. But 2 players not practicing yesterday, and wide receiver Deontay Johnson with the hamstring. That was, of course, expected, and also running back Anthony McFarland not practicing due to a knee injury, which was a new development there. So Johnson did speak with reporters, which was interesting in itself. Usually the injured guys don't talk with reporters. He said he's feeling better, making some progress, but does not have a timetable for his return. Very, very unlikely he's going to play at least Monday night, and we'll just check what week 3 could bring against the Raiders. And then McFarland not practicing as well. A couple players limited. Chukwuma Okorafor continuing to go through concussion protocol. James Daniels, Pat Fryermuth, Larry Ogunjobi also limited with injuries that were mostly sustained in that opener against the 49ers.
Yeah, we'll see how the limited list shakes out there, but I think really the only questionable one at this point is maybe Okorafor and getting him through the rest of the concussion protocol. It'll be interesting to see if he remains limited on Friday, and then obviously they'll have an injury report on Saturday as well too this week here. So to me, the one to watch here is Chukwuma Okorafor, and obviously if he can't play, then he would be inactive. And then Dylan Cook would dress, and then I don't know, based on some of the practice reports that are out there, Broderick Jones has been working at right tackle, so you could potentially see Dan Moore at left tackle, Broderick Jones at right tackle, and Chukwuma Okorafor can't go.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. It's a subject of my terrible take today. I mean, maybe they're confident Okorafor is going to be cleared and play in this one, but with concussions and concussion protocol, there really is no absolute or guarantee. You can moving along fine, and then you have exertion, and then you have a setback, and more symptoms pop up. It's unpredictable, so you don't know. And we knew this backup right tackle spot was kind of messy, despite all the added depth and the better look of the offensive line, which it absolutely was and still is. But who was that backup right tackle? And when Okorafor went down for the final 4 plays of week 1. Dan Moore shifted over to right tackle, and Jones came into left tackle. Now it sounds like Jones is getting most of the reps at right tackle, and he's a guy that has not played right tackle hardly at all. A little bit of Georgia, has not taken a snap there in Pittsburgh until apparently this week. And so, you want your first start to be against the Browns tough front at right tackle Monday night. Not ideal, but there really is no ideal situation right now.
Right. And back to Johnson, the fact that they did not place him on IR is as encouraged as you can be about not having a guy like that. The fact that they did not place him on IR means that they don't think it's something that'll cause him to miss at least 4 games in total. Now, those things are obviously tricky and all. I'm sure they won't rush him back, but he's obviously going to miss Monday night. And then you got another short week after that. So I'm thinking at least probably 2 games that Deontay's going to miss, and then we'll see what happens in the third one.
Yeah, that's a fair point there. I think, again, him even just speaking to the media was surprising and maybe a small piece of encouraging news that they don't think this is going to be some sort of IR situation, as you said, or, long, 3-4 weeks kind of deal. One other procedural note here, Pittsburgh working up punter Brad Wing yesterday. That's a name we haven't heard in a long, long time. And so he was with Pittsburgh. I forget the years, but it was, 5+ years ago. And I thought Joe Clark made a good point. Probably the reason for this, I know that the first thought, and it was my thought too, about Presley Harvin and his poor performance in week 1, and Tomlin calling out the punting unit in week 1, which was certainly junior varsity, to steal the Tomlin quote there. But because the Browns punter is left-footed, and I believe Wing is a left-footed punter as well, they typically bring in a lefty during the week of practice to help the punt returners just be able to get the feel for the spin of the football. It's a bit different with the left-footers than it is with your traditional right-footed punter. So that's probably the reason why.
That's a good point. That's a good observation.
Yeah, that was Joe Clark. So kudos, because they've done this before, and so that's also probably why you saw him come in yesterday as opposed to the traditional Tuesday workout day, because they don't practice on Tuesdays. They don't bring in a left-footed punter because there's no one to punt to. So that may be the reason. But of course, Harvin needs to step it up pretty quickly here, because that was not a good outing in week 1.
Right. So there's there could be layers to this, but that's a good observation by Joe Clark.
Yeah. So just want to make a note of that. All right, where to now, Dave? Covered the injuries for Cleveland. They had 8 guys not practicing on Thursday. Half of them were due to rest, with Myles Garrett, Amari Cooper, Joel Bitonio, and somebody else I'm forgetting right now. Probably the biggest names to watch, and we talk about it with Scott a little bit later in the show, is Juan Thornhill. Their safety signed over in the offseason. He missed week 1 with a calf injury, did not practice yesterday. Status uncertain for Monday night, but the Browns defense seemed to hold their own without him against the Bengals.
All right. We'll see how that plays out the rest of the week. I think they're going to be the Browns are going to be a fairly healthy team overall. I mean, obviously they lost Jack Conklin, and that's huge. And, we talk a lot with Scott Petrak about Dawan Jones going to be making his first NFL start, and how that's going to be about against TJ Watt. And Dawan had some interesting comments about what he views as maybe a potential weakness with TJ Watt. Yeah. Good luck. Yeah. Good luck with that. That should be an interesting matchup to watch here. Shall we talk about the coordinators?
Yeah, let's get into the coordinators. Speaking as they do every Thursday, Matt Canada and Teryl Austin. And off the top, and I'm not trying to be, 100. I'm not trying to be hypercritical, but the takeaway from both of these guys, and they literally said it, is they're surprised about how poorly their units played, and they don't really know why they played that poorly. It didn't inspire a lot of confidence. And I understand, what are they supposed to say? And I've told people this as well. You can have the best coordinator press conference ever, and if your unit sucks on game day, nobody cares, and vice versa. You can be the worst interview ever, and if your unit gets the job done on game day, then I'll take that, 10 times out of 10. But I didn't love the answers, but obviously everything just matters. What matters now, I should say, is just fixing it for Monday night.
And as usual, Matt Canada didn't give us much really to chew on and to contextualize. Say it for me.
Contextualize, I think is where you're going.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My main takeaway from that was how aggressive Matt. He opened up with an opening statement, and a long one at that. And B, it seemed like he had a couple of my monster drinks and a shot of tequila before delivering his press. It was a more aggressive. It wasn't a passive. It was passive tone with him. Like, all right, I'm gonna give you he still gave us the same usual cliche kind of stuff, but it was more in an aggressive manner there. And you want to talk about big takeaways? I think you hit on one. And they were surprised. He said Kenny wasn't on his game, and Kenny will tell you that. But nobody, nothing. Nobody played well overall there. He says, but that will improve. Things will be better. He says. And I think the other kind of notable thing, which really isn't notable, talking about the wide receivers with Deontay out, that it'd be more of a by committee approach. And we already talked about Des Fitzpatrick, and we'll see if he figures into that committee approach at all. What other takeaways were there that were,
He said there's no concern that it's going to continue in terms of the struggles of the offense. That was a pretty, again, what are you going to say, that you're deeply concerned? But a pretty bold statement to say that, basically calling week 1 a one-off. They're not going to repeat those mistakes. They're going to be fixed for week 2.
Yeah, my favorite phrase, don't tell me about the labor pains, just show me the baby. And boy, that coming out, and you did a fantastic breakdown on how boring, again, that offense was coming out of week 1 there. And look, and Canada went out of his way. So, you get behind like you are, and it kind of limits this, that, and the other. Okay. But I mean, you can't open things up a little bit more when you're down the way you are. Look, there were, without a doubt, I mean, Kenny Pickett did not play well. Kenny Pickett missed some throws in this game that could have potentially been. I mean, look, that early dig to Deontay we talked about the other day, that might be 6 in the end zone if he hits that. There was, obviously the slant to Deontay, which they ended up scoring on that drive. But other things in that game, the one of how many times did they run bunch switch routes in this game? The once, maybe twice.
Yeah, probably once or twice.
Right. If they had got solid protection on that play, maybe that's a big gainer, game changing kind of play to Calvin Austin, who came open on the over route there. Later on in the game, Kenny Pickett turned down a cover 2 hole shot, right? To Pickens there. He left plays. Kenny left plays out there on the field, but as a whole, how many opportunities were there for Kenny to deliver big play? I mean, did you go back and watch that 3rd and 20 call?
The alt curls. Yeah.
Yeah.
All set down. Yeah.
What exactly are you trying to do there? I mean, I understand it's 3rd and 20. All right. There's not too many things in the playbook that will, that you call in that situation there. But damn it, either let Kenny punt on 3rd and 20 or run a damn draw, and get the hell off the field. Or how about a quick slant within that situation? At least give your guy an opportunity to pick up. If obviously a first down is improbable, but maybe you get 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 more yards in your and you help your punter out a little bit in those situations there. So I think you did a great job of breaking it down, and all the the terror concepts and the mirrored concepts that they ran, and then the other stuff just really, really vanilla kind of stuff. And they didn't put themselves in a situation to deliver, to give Kenny even more opportunities to make an explosive play. And you come out of this game with what? 2 explosive plays overall. You date back to Canada's first year as an offensive coordinator here. This team is near the bottom. I think only like 2 or 3 teams have less explosive plays on offense than the Steelers do during that span. Not only that, you look at the average yards of those explosive plays. I mean, it's one thing if you're getting 60 or 70-yard plays mixed in there for some touchdowns, but they're not. Their average of the explosive plays since Matt Canada has been offensive coordinator is down near at the bottom of the league as well too. So nothing's changed here, and Matt Canada is telling us that it'll get better.
And that's, to me, the frustrating part. This isn't a one-off thing where things have been going fine and we didn't have these issues about kind of the very limited play sheet of this offense in past years. Again, I try to be really fair and give grace. I know when you're down and you're playing from behind, your playbook is not unlimited. You can't run the stuff that you hope that you would run, and it's harder to build constraint plays in your play action game. And of course, the run game is essentially no longer there. So it does certainly limit you in a ton of ways, but I was just venting kind of my frustration watching this offense and just kind of seeing the same 3 or 4 concepts, 2x2 this, 3x1 that. And I loved, and when I say loved, I mean, I hated the stat that you had 51 dropbacks and 51 curls. I mean, that is not what you're looking for.
Yeah, it'd be fun to kind of track that. Now, look, a lot of route
fun is a loose term there. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, look, a lot of your concepts are going to have curls in them, right?
Sure. And they ran a lot of zone. I understand why they ran the calls they did, because San Francisco was very zone heavy in this game.
Right. So, I mean, that needs context to some degree, because a curl is a popular part of a lot of route combinations and all like that. But with the looking back at the game flow and down as quick as you need, do you really need as many curls? Within that? And
because how many times did you see, like on that 3rd and 20 and many other examples, just 2x2 meter, right. They all just sat down 5-10 yards and they just tried to sit. I mean, it's all the concept was. It's all curls. They all sit down and Pickett has to try to find the window.
Right. It was frustrating in a vacuum to look back at those numbers, to look at the game flow and all like that. Then once again, you only see, I think the other day we left the podcast saying there was just one slant route, I think, in total ran. I think SIS Sports Info's solutions, which by the way is fantastic if you can afford the subscription to it. So I don't think we give those guys enough credit as a source. It is pricey, but man, you can drill a lot of stuff down, and then you pair that with our charting that that you and the great Tom Mead does. It gives you a lot of situational type stuff. But 3 slant routes in total in this game, and only once that was targeted, and that was obviously to Deontay Johnson, which Kenny was off target on. 1 or 2 bunch routes that you run switch combinations out of. They need to vary this stuff up, man. They really do, and I don't have confidence that they will.
3 slants, when's the parade? We thought it was 1. We got triple that, so that's something. No, one
of them was to Washington, by the way.
Right, and these are just routes run. These are not targets, right? These are just literal routes run by the receivers. And granted, they ran some crossers and stuff that don't get categorized as slants, that are a different type of in-breaking route. And again, this is both. And I had a separate article I wrote about the offense's unforced errors. And that's not on Matt Canada. Whether it's the missed should be touchdown to Deontay. There was the one play we talked about where Allen Robinson should have sat down. It was his 3rd and 4. He tries to run across, and the pass is behind. That's on Robinson. They have to punt because of that. Not getting hats on linebackers in the run game. Those. So again, this is not exclusively on Matt Canada. And when you're down early and your playbook and your game plans kind of toss out the window, it's a tough spot to be in as a play caller. But it's everything that was happening last year that continued in that 49ers game. And you just hope it changes for the Browns game Monday night.
And obviously he was asked about, because a couple players said, yeah, we had success in tempo and all like that. I mean, the takeaway that a lot of the fan base has at this point, and it's understandable, is, well, let's run more tempo. But in that same breath, if that tempo doesn't deliver the results that you need, you're just getting off the field even faster. The defense won't enjoy that, right? within that. I mean, look, could this offense come out Monday night and start with tempo to get into a groove? Yeah, that probably would not be a bad bad suggestion overall. But you can't run tempo. I mean, you can't Kelly this, right?
Oh, Chip Kelly this. No,
right.
You can't do that. And yeah, I mean, tempo's fine. It has its time and place. I think it's, like dessert. You have it every now and then. You have too much of it, it's going to make yourself sick. But I don't blame them for not using tempo in this game because they couldn't get a first down. They couldn't sustain a drive. They went 3 and out on their first 5 possessions. So you can't have, if you have tempo, you got to get a first down, get some positive yards. Incompletions and runs for 0 yards don't facilitate tempo. So I'm not mad at Matt Canada for not running tempo in that game. Besides the 2-minute drive that, of course, produced the only points of the game.
How about having you have a script for your opening drive? How about having a script if you're down 20 points?
Hopefully not, because I don't want the team to be down 20 points as much as they have been.
Yeah, but be prepared, right?
Sure. I mean, there's just calls. You have your down distance. You have your plays for 2nd and long and 3rd and short and high red zone, low red zones. I mean, that's
Lord knows he sticks with it.
Yeah, it just feels like there's very few plays in those situations because it just feels like they're running the same 3 things over and over again.
All right, got anything else to beat Matt Canada up over the head with?
Nah, I'm
gonna call him Curly Canada.
Oh, I do have I forgot to tell you. I was going to tell you my, this is very cheesy, my nickname for the Steelers offense. It's very dumb. This is not supposed to be me impressive, but I call this
poop.
The poop. Yeah, we'll call it the poop offense. No, this is the chlorophyll offense because more like borophyll. Old Adam Sandler. Yeah, that's what's in my head every single time that I watch this offense is Adam Sandler. Is that Billy Madison, right? Yelling borophyll.
All right.
So that's why they pay me the big bucks over here, Dave, for insights like that. Let's flip over to Teryl Austin, what he had to say. Not a whole lot from him, to be honest with you. Of course, said by committee approach in terms of replacing Cam Hayward. We already knew that. Not one man alone cannot do that. Thought maybe the most interesting thing, and it was a very brief comment, but someone asked about, could Joey Porter's role expand? He's been the dime corner right now, only 7 snaps against San Francisco, and Austin essentially saying we like where he's at right now and very much implying that role is not expected to expand.
So in other words, if you've bought a Joey Porter Jr. jersey and you're going to the game Monday night and you're looking forward to Joey Porter playing a large amount of snaps, then you better hope that this defense can get the Browns into a lot of 3rd and long situations or 2nd and long situations.
Yeah, that's Porter's game plan. And honestly, I think it's fine. I think I mentioned this on Wednesday's show before Austin even said anything. I don't think Porter's ready for that expanded role right now. Could it come later in the year? Absolutely. But I think dime packages to begin the year is A-okay for him.
All right, Minkah Fitzpatrick in the box.
Talked about that as well.
Putting Minkah in a box.
Nobody puts Minkah in the corner except for the Steelers in this game. And yeah, I mentioned this on Monday that, he was using the box a lot, and our charting validates that, I think 25 times of the 60 or so snaps in this game. And it's not the reason why they lost. And, you could point to their run game and matching up on George Kittle in this one as reasons for it. I tried to, I was going to potentially write an article. I tried to see some of the numbers of how successful the defense was, him in the box versus not in the box, and they really were about the same. So there probably wasn't enough to dedicate a full article to it. I just would make the point that I don't believe this defense functions as well overall when Minkah's not playing that free safety position. And it doesn't mean he's glued, Greg Williams style 30 yards deep, but when he's a free safety and can rotate down and be that last line of defense in the run game, that's when he and this defense seems to be at their best. Whenever he's in the box or over slot, so many examples of that over the years. And it's the reason why he wanted out of Miami in the first place, that it's just not his game. The defense does not seem to do as well when Minkah's not in Minkah's spot.
And George Kittle talked, I think, yesterday saying that, the reason probably he wasn't so productive is because they had Minkah following him around.
I think it was that, but also they just chipped because he was chipping the whole game. I mean, he was barely part of the core concept. So, he's chipping Watt and then going out there was kind of a safety valve. So that was kind of my thought to why he was so unproductive in that game.
All right.
What else from Austin? That was kind of probably about it. Talked about Keanu Benton, impressed by him. And that's one of the few bright spots of this week 1 game.
About the inside line, it doesn't sound like we are going to see Mark Robinson yet. He says his take on the inside linebackers play was my take. I think, like anybody, there's really nothing to talk about. That was really good last week, but I was encouraged by their physicality, encouraged in terms of the way they came downhill and did some things, but there's always things that we have to do better. But I'm encouraged by that group. He was asked, so you're not going to step Mark Robinson into that at all in any way? And his answer was, I am encouraged by the guys we have playing right now. So don't expect to wear your Mark Robinson jersey and see him out there a lot on defense.
Yeah, the Porter and the Robinson jersey is not in a great place right now. And again, I'm not surprised, but it is 1 week, and this team's not going to overreact and start making a bunch of changes, some small tweaks, and obviously the Hayward injury impacts, quite a bit, and that's going to necessitate, quite a bit of change there. But it is 1 week, and so they're not going to, fire everybody and change everything after just one game,
or throughout the season either.
Oh yeah, or maybe that. Although throughout the year, I mean, you may see some changes there. What else, Dave? Anything else players have said? I'm trying to think about anything notable, from the actual players yesterday.
Just the fact that you get the sense that they agree that the hurry up, that the up tempo stuff was working, but we've already addressed that yeah, we might see an uptick in it, but it's not something that you can do every series, and they better get some first downs if they run it.
They did talk about some of the communication issues and growing pains of that, and so hopefully that gets worked through sooner than later. Do want to mention here, and we've spent probably more time talking about him than I expected, but there's been a lot of good commentary about it. Just to kind of touch on Cleveland here, and then we'll kind of get maybe Scott Petrak here in a second. But DaJuan Jones, does he see the flaw in TJ Watt? Does he see the kryptonite? And it was just he praised Watt a lot overall. So I'm not trying to pretend like he was calling TJ Watt out. This is not a Deion Sanders, give them bulletin board material type stuff, but made the mention of Watt leaving his chest open a little bit, and DaJuan Jones with those long 36 and 3/8 inch arms may try to take advantage of that. So something to watch for in this one, especially that matchup just overall, the rookie DaJuan Jones on TJ Watt.
Not that TJ Watt needs extra motivation whatsoever to go along with his preparation and all like that, but I bet he does not miss that quote these next several days. I think we've highlighted it on the site. These guys, like it or not, they read some of this stuff that's out there. DaJuan Jones seems to think that his length will come into play into this one, and I think one of the funniest things is he's talking that, well, they're probably going to have TJ Watt rushing against me so much because I'm a rookie. No, they're going to have TJ Watt rushing against you because you play right tackle, and that's the side that TJ Watt plays on. So that alone kind of makes me wonder, how deep has DaJuan gone into the tape? Because if he did the 3 tape scan of what TJ Watt does, he will notice, man, he sure does line up on the left side of that defense against the right tackle quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, he said he watched film, but that's a pretty obvious thing. He's a pretty static guy. They don't really move TJ around too much. So, but regardless, he's going to find out one way or another, whether he knows it now or we'll know it Monday night, that he's going to see TJ Watt virtually every single snap.
It's going to be a big focal point in this game because Watt can obviously, they call him a game changer for a reason.
He is, although again, not downplaying the impact, but he was great in week 1, and it didn't seem to matter at all. But hopefully you would expect that if Watt has the kind of games that he had in week 1, if that continues, then Pittsburgh will inevitably play some closer contests.
Another interesting thing, and we'll see how much Nick Herbig plays in this game. But if you go back to that Wisconsin-Ohio State matchup, Jones handled Herbig pretty damn well in that game.
Good point. Yeah, that's obviously a size disadvantage there, but sometimes those small guys can really get under those taller tackles, and Watt can bend the edge extremely well. So it'll be a fun matchup, and we'll see. Again, I expect the Cleveland to do similar things to San Francisco. I know I was watching the Bengals game, the all-22, and the tight end stayed in a lot, and Njoku was doing a lot of pass protection in this one. So I imagine they're not going to leave Jones by himself the entire game.
Okay, we're on to Cleveland.
On to Cleveland. And with that said, let's talk to our good friend here, Scott Petrak, who writes for the Chronicle Telegram and Medina Gazette, also brownzone.com, the zone coverage podcast. You can follow him on Twitter at Scott Petrak. That's Petrak. We'll take a pause and come back with Scott.
Okay, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. It is Friday. It is week 2 of the NFL season. It is Steelers versus Browns Monday night at Acrisure Stadium. And as usual, we have a opposing beat writer on, someone who you should be very familiar with now. He's been on the Terrible Podcast several times talking about Scott Petrak. Scott covers the Browns for the Chronicle Telegram and Medina Gazette. As always, you can find a lot of, really all of his written stuff at brownzone.com. He also has a podcast you can listen to as well, too, ahead of that. So with that, it's been a little while. Scott, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott, let's start first. 1-0 Browns coming off of a very impressive win over the Bengals in week 1 there. What's the feeling right now? I mean, for them to dismantle the Bengals the way they did there last week, and in rainy conditions, but they obviously did a lot of things that they wanted to do, and really kind of what they like to do, their identity, which is run the football and play good defense there. What's kind of the big overall picture of the Browns coming out of week 1?
I mean, there's a lot of excitement, obviously. The feeling around here is that this team has a lot of talent, but that's been this feeling before, and it hasn't always shown up, right? Right. So I think there's an excitement. I think it's probably tempered a little bit, and if the Browns happen to win Monday night, it would go through the roof. But, you look at this roster, and they made a bunch of changes on defense, and they showed up in that opener against the Bengals, whether it's Jim Schwartz as coordinator, they added Dalvin Tomlinson, they added Zadarius Smith who gets a hit on the first play of the game. They had, Obo Okoronkwo who had a sack. Just a lot to like from that defensive front and that pass rush, and that's what the hope was, and the expectation was that the defense would be much improved, and through one game it certainly was. They did wonders against the Bengals. And then, you mentioned the play good defense and run the ball. And they're going to do that. I think the weather changed the game plan because they came out with 3 wides and looking to throw, and then nobody could complete a pass, and the quarterbacks were struggling to throw it on both sides of the ball. So then Stefanski went pretty hard run. It's going to be interesting to see as the year goes on, and even Monday night, how they balance, trying to throw it with Deshaun Watson, but yet you still have Nick Chubb in the backfield.
Yeah, going back through that all 22 on the offensive reel last night, you could tell weather really impacted, and I think Watson, kind of said as much in the post game, because there were 2 home run balls to I think Goodwin that probably on a clear day, Watson hits those with ease there. So, but within that, I mean, they still ran that outside zone. I think 12 runs of that with Chubb and Ford, and got like 53 yards. And then just what all they do off of that, being able to boot, have success with that and boot Deshaun off of that. So yeah, I think weather impacted that. What's been the biggest I mean, look, we all, Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator, comes in over there. We know a lot about him throughout time, a very good defensive coordinator. But what stuck out to you maybe the most in this first game about maybe some differences on the defensive side of football?
Yeah, I think there were 3 things. And let's start up front, because I think that was the biggest, I don't know about the biggest key, it was the most obvious. He did a lot of different things, and I'm working on a story about that right now. Just, they went 5 D linemen sometimes. They went Miles at tackle and Zadarius Smith at tackle when they were in passing situations, pass rush situations. They went a lot of blitzes. He blitzed more than I thought he would. It was linebacker blitzes. He brought cornerback Denzel Ward once. He brought Grant Delpit, safety, and he got a hit on Burrow and forced an incompletion. So a lot of variety up front. Myles Garrett, I think people have probably seen the clip going around social media where he does like his crossover dribble hesitation move as he walks up over the center. It's not like Myles has never done that before, never been in front of the center or moved inside, but it felt a little bit more this time.
Like four or five times, wasn't it?
Right. And then there's more variety in general. So that stood out to me. I think Schwartz blitzed more than he has in the past. He's kind of been up and down with that, and it depends what kind of corners he has. And that was the final point I wanted to make, is that he trusts his corners, right? The trio of Ward, Newsome II, and Emerson Jr. And if you got three corners you think can match up with Chase, Higgins, and Boyd, then you can do a lot of stuff up front. So I think that bodes well.
And they matched up well and shut down that Bengals offense. Scott, to go back to the offense, obviously I think the focal points on Deshaun Watson in his first full year starting for Cleveland. How different does he look from the parts of last year to this year? And has he taken a true leadership role? I know he's been voted captain, as virtually every quarterback is, but do you feel like he's truly a leader of this offense and this team?
Yeah, the leadership thing I don't have really any questions about. Voted captain, he did for the second straight year. He took guys to, a resort in the offseason. He's working out with Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore and David Njoku and Donald Peoples-Jones, away from the facility. So I feel that component is there. On the field, we've seen improvement. And Alex Van Pelt, the coordinator, talks about really kind of in OTAs and minicamp. You saw, the light go on and Watson start to throw it better and have a better understanding of what they were trying to do. And I think you saw that continue into training camp in the preseason, but it's, there's still inconsistencies. There's still ups and downs. And we saw that against the Bengals. Again, the weather was a factor. But he holds onto the ball too long sometimes. And part of that's trying to create plays downfield. And he's good at extending plays, right? But that can lead to sacks. It can lead to negative plays. And, I think the coaching staff, if it's open, they want you to throw it. If it's not open, then make something happen. And I think there's some plays where it is open and he doesn't see it or chooses not to throw it. And again, I think that's part of coming back from that long layoff. And he talked about that was the biggest thing last year. And I still think that's a work in progress. I think it's still reasonable to expect him to play better as the season goes on. But there were moments throughout the offseason, throughout preseason, throughout training camp, and even in that opener where you saw, the Deshaun Watson you expect to see, right? He still throws it great. He's still accurate. Mm-hmm. He still can make plays with his feet, right? It's just maybe a little bit of the decision-making, a little bit of reading the offense. And the hope is that, he continues to grow in those areas.
And one of the weapons he'll have to throw to in this game is Elijah Moore, who I know you guys added this offseason over from the New York Jets. And I thought the way that Cleveland used him against Cincinnati was really interesting. I think the first snap of the game, he's in the backfield. He takes that run, cuts it back, gets 19 on it later in the game. Is the goal with Moore to really creatively move him around, or could that game plan sort of change week to week?
No, I think you're going to see that throughout the year. And that was one of the things we really saw in the preseason and training camp especially. They use him in a bunch of ways. Slot, outside, running back, option with Deshaun. Like, they tried to do a lot with him, and they think he can have a big impact. And he had a little bit of an impact in that Bengals game, right? There wasn't a whole lot of offense. He had that long run that you mentioned. He caught a deep pass that I think led to their touchdown at the end of the first half. So there were a couple plays there, and I think there'll be games where there's a bunch of Elijah Moore. Right? And he makes a bunch of plays. And at least that's how it certainly trended during camp. Look, you watched him, and I knew that when the Browns traded for him, they really liked him. I knew that they thought he could have a big role, right? But I don't know if even they envisioned it would be as diverse as it is. And that's certainly been pretty consistent throughout training camp. And I think it's going to continue to be that way. Obviously different, for each game and the opponent and that kind of thing. But yeah, you're going to see him in a bunch of ways, and they hope that he has a giant impact. Now, we still need to see it. We still need to see, he's a small guy. Can he make the plays downfield, right? Can he run a go route, get behind somebody and go up and make a play? They haven't done that with him a lot, but they think he can do that. They certainly want to, and they need him because, the offense lacked some explosion last year, and they need him. They're counting on him and Marquise Goodwin to provide some of that.
The big storyline this week, especially on offense, feels like it's Dawan Jones taking over at right tackle with, unfortunately, Conklin going down and going on IR. Sad injury there. Good player in Conklin. We know quite a bit about Dawan Jones after kind of watching a lot of his tape, going back to the Senior Bowl there, and looking like the Steelers might have interest in him at least initially there. How would you? I mean, this is a tough first start for Dawan Jones. Draws TJ Watt in this game. How would you rate how Dawan Jones played after taking over for Conklin in that game? And they're obviously going to give him some help to some degree, but it's not like you can do it for 60-something snaps in a game. What do you think is, then Dawan talked about he thinks that Watt leaves his chest open and that Dawan's going to use his length and all like that. But what's your thoughts on this matchup and once again, how Jones played after taking over in that game?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to get any tougher, right? I mean, this is the toughest matchup he's going to have all season. I think that's fair to say, safe to say. I thought he played fine after Conklin left the game. He didn't give up a bunch of pressures. I went and rewatched the game and focused on him, and I thought he was solid. Their question with him, well, first of all, he showed up in minicamp out of shape, told me he had, I think it was a dislocated toe that affected his working out in the offseason, the draft process. Showed up out of shape. I think it took a while for him to acclimate. I think the coaches took a while for him to kind of get what they were talking about and wanting out of him. But then the turning point was really that first preseason game, the Hall of Fame game. They played him for every snap, all 74, and he showed that he could handle it, the conditioning. He played well. He's obviously his size and footwork are obvious. And then it just kind of continued to grow. And I tell you, though, it was a bit of a surprise that he was the guy that replaced Conklin. I mean, they have James Hudson III, who was picked in the 4th round 2 years previously. He had been the backup to Conklin the last couple of years when Conklin would get hurt. He's got more experience, yet it was Jones the first guy out there. And I think that just shows how much progress he has made, obviously the potential he has. They think they have something here. They think they have a hidden gem with the guy they got in the 4th round. So I think he's played well. He needs to be better in the run game. That's one of the things last time we talked to Bill Callahan, the line coach, about him. That's, it was been pretty good protection. We need to get better in the run game. And I think that remains true. And obviously he's big enough and he moves well enough. It's probably, it's details in the run game. But I think there's a lot there. Now, he's so big. Watt can bend so easily. I talked to Brian Baldinger of NFL Network about this matchup the other day. And, he goes, those guys give the tall guys the biggest problems, right? Those slippery guys that can bend and get to the ground and turn the corner, and that's obviously who TJ Watt is. So it's going to be a difficult matchup. You're right. Baldinger thinks that they're going to trust Dawan Jones to start the game, give him some one-on-ones, maybe not on 3rd down, but give him some one-on-ones in passing situations and see how he handles it, and then see how much you need to help, right? So it's going to be interesting. You talk about matchups possibly wrecking the game, and this is one of them, right? The Browns could be the better team. The Browns could play better. But if TJ Watt gets, 3 forced fumbles, 3 strip sacks, that changes the game, right? Or if he hits his arm and it turns into a pick six, whatever it is. So that's what, if you're the Browns, you just hope, because you figure Dawan Jones is going to get beat. You hope it doesn't turn into a game-changing play. But there's a lot of reason to like this kid, and it's because he's huge and he's got really good feet.
When you look at what the Browns did defensively, and then you flip over to see the 6 plays on offense or 8 plays on offense, that the Steelers run to run in their playbook here in week 1 here. And obviously the 49ers played a lot of zone in this game. Kept the lid on everything and then concentrated on stopping the run. Does Jim Schwartz, is he going to deserve a paycheck this week? Or, how do you envision them defending this kind of lackluster, look,
Yeah.
hardly any explosive plays on offense. And really the only couple of things to get excited about was the Najee Harris explosive run late in the first half, and then an explosive extended play late in the game when the game was over.
Right. I mean, I would expect him to put a bunch of guys on the line of scrimmage, try to stop the run, and make Pickett beat him, and Pickett try to beat those corners that we talked about earlier. If he played as much man as he did against the Bengals, and again, the weather was a factor, but I don't think the Browns are going to have a tougher matchup 3 receiver wise than the Bengals. So if he's going to play that much man against those guys, I don't know why he wouldn't do it against the Steelers. Right? It just feels to me like that's the recipe. Is he's going to do it until somebody makes him, not do it, right? And proves that, hey, you're getting beat this way. So I'd expect a good chunk of man. I'd expect a bunch of guys on the line of scrimmage. I think when it's a passing situation, they're going to get after Pickett. And that's Schwartz's philosophy in general, is create a negative play. Because if you can get him, if you can get him in 2nd and 12 or 2nd and 10 or 3rd and whatever, right? It's really hard for the offense to convert. And then you can do a bunch of stuff with that pass rush. And you can go with your 3 ends package, and you can blitz, and you can do all this stuff. And so all you have to do is create that one negative play at some point, right? If you drop Harris for a 2-yard loss on 1st down with the run blitz, okay, it's 2nd and 12, go get Pickett. So I would expect a lot of aggression until the Steelers show that they can handle it and beat that.
Scott, is there any weakness to this Browns defense or weaker area? I know it might be tougher to judge considering how dominant they were on Sunday. Is it the linebackers with Walker? Is it the safety situation? They've had some change there. Is Juan Thornhill going to play this week? What's kind of the layout on the linebackers and the safeties?
I think safeties are fine. Thornhill didn't practice yesterday. I mean, we're taping this on Friday, right? So he didn't play week 1. I would guess he doesn't play Monday night. It's too early to say that definitively. But they have Rodney McLeod, who played well week 1. He's well-versed in Jim Schwartz's defense. So I don't think there's a huge drop-off there, right, especially for a short period of time. Now, it hurts how much 3 safety stuff you can do, but I think the second play of the game last week, they went 3 safeties with undrafted Ohio State rookie Ronnie Hickman as the 3rd safety. So he's not afraid to do that. So I think their safeties are fine. Grant Delpit played a great game, probably the best game he's played since he's been at the Browns in the opener. Linebacker has been a question mark all off season. Walker's back from a torn quad he had a year ago against the Steelers. Sione Takitaki's back from a torn ACL. So those were a couple of question marks that have been answered. So as long as those guys are healthy, I think they have enough. You throw JOK into the mix, right? Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. And they don't play a lot of 3 linebackers. I mean, I don't know. I'm watching the Steelers game. I didn't feel like they ran a ton of 2 tight ends. If they do, then you'll see all 3 linebackers on the field. But if not, if it's nickel and 3 wides, the Browns will go a lot of nickel, they'll go a lot of dime, which means you only need 1 or 2 linebackers out there. So I don't think that's a big weakness. The area of concern that remains a question mark, I think, would be the run defense. Just because Cincinnati didn't do it a lot, didn't try to run the ball a bunch. The Browns are terrible last year. And like I talked about Schwartz's attacking defense, I think that can leave you vulnerable sometimes to some counters, some run things, maybe a drop, you get everybody up the line of scrimmage, or, heading forward and you slip underneath guys. So I think that's something that they still need to prove, is that they can stand up to, 30 runs a game, 25, 30 runs a game. But their hope is that they never get in that situation, that they're leading early and then they can go get the pass rusher. But I think that's still a little bit of an unknown.
Right, and Pittsburgh hopes they can run the ball more than the 9 times they did with the running backs there in week 1. My last question for you, Scott, and I'll let Dave finish things out. Mike Tomlin has a phrase that was pretty popular in the offseason called reasonable expectations. And I'd love to ask you, Scott, what are reasonable expectations for this Browns 2023 team? I know everybody feels really good coming off that great win over the Bengals. I mean, I assume you guys are probably thinking playoffs. You're thinking beyond that. What is a reasonable thought for where this Browns team can go this year?
Yeah, I think playoffs is certainly reasonable. I mean, they have the most cash spend in the league. They're paying a bunch of guys a bunch of money, and they hired Schwartz, and I'm sure they're paying him a bunch of money, right? Like, this team is built to go to the playoffs. Now, you need your quarterback to play well. You need guys to stay healthy. You need the defense to make a big jump from last year, because the defense, in my opinion, even without Watson for 11 games last year, the defense is what let down this team. So it's off to a great start. So, yeah, the expectations are the playoffs. I don't know if there's a lot of people thinking that they're going to win the division, right? There's a lot of good competition. We know how good Cincinnati is. We know how good Baltimore is. But like, I picked them to go 10-7 and go to the and get a wild card spot. Like, that feels reasonable to me. Now, if they beat Pittsburgh and they beat Baltimore in week 4, I think you're going to have to recalibrate your expectations a little bit. But regardless of what happens Monday night, I think the Browns will be in the mix in the division and in the AFC from a playoff perspective. I think, I can't make the leap of, hey, they're in the same class as Kansas City and Buffalo and Cincinnati, even though they just beat Cincinnati, but they beat Cincinnati 6 out of 7 times. So I'm not ready to make that leap, but I believe they're built to be a playoff team.
Yeah, I was going to play off of what, or I was going to ask a similar question to what Alex had there. What was and you already said what your preseason prediction was, and it doesn't feel like how shocked were you with I guess coming out of that week 1 game? How has that swayed you any? And then on the flip side, where were you on the Steelers based on that preseason that they had? And where are you on them after 1 game?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the Browns would win the opener. I just thought it felt like kind of set up that way. It's at home. Burrow hadn't played. There's a bunch of factors. I think the Browns had a bit of a surprise factor in Jim Schwartz. So I felt like the Browns were going to win that game. I didn't think it would go the way it did. Right. So it swayed me a little bit. I want to see the Browns back it up against Pittsburgh before I get carried away. And I thought Nick Chubb made a great point. Hey, we won the opener last year and then we lost the week 2 to the Jets, right? Now, this felt different. It felt more dominant. It felt more real. But you still need to see this team prove that it can string wins, prove that it doesn't get complacent or, have the ups and downs that it's gone through in the past. So I'm still about the same place, but all of a sudden you think to yourself, okay, if this defense is dominant, maybe they don't need Watson to be as good as I thought they would need him to be, right? Like, maybe they can win games without him at peak performance, at least for a while, and that would allow them to win more games, early in the season. So, I'm open to readjusting. Now, for the Steelers, I mean, I still think they're fine. Like, I had them going about 9-8. Like, I thought all 4 teams in the division were going to have winning record. And I had the Steelers 4th, but I thought that they would be right in the mix. Now, and I watched that game, right, the Niners game, and obviously they didn't play well, but I didn't think it didn't change my opinion that the Steelers might turn out to be fine, right? I mean, Pickett didn't play great, but he still completed a bunch of passes. The injuries are what is a bigger concern, I think, for the Steelers, especially Monday night. I think they'll figure it out. I think they have pieces on defense. Obviously it's hard to start 0-2. It's hard to, get off to a bad start and recover. But when I watched that game, I didn't think, oh my God, I know what the score was and I know how it played out, but I didn't walk away going, man, the Steelers have nothing. They're terrible. That wasn't my reaction. So I fully expect the Steelers to play much better Monday night. Play with emotion and the crowd and all that stuff. I just don't know if I think the Browns are more talented than the Steelers overall. I certainly think the Steelers could win the game. I think there's a bunch of ways you can have that happen. But not having Deontay Johnson, not having Cam Hayward, I think those are significant when the Browns are playing well and the Steelers are through 1 game have not played well.
All right, so you're telling me you're probably going to be a trend buster this week. You know all the numbers. 20-0 for the Steelers on Monday Night Football in their last 20. The Browns are 0-19 against the Steelers in their last 19 regular season games. You have to go back to 1952, the last time the Steelers started 0-2 at home in their first 2 games of the season. What else is there? This is the first time in a long time that the Browns have the opportunity to start 2-0, I think, in the season. The trends are the trends, though. Their history. What you got for a final score on Monday night, Scott?
Yeah, first of all, I'm going to steal that 1952 stat. So it's 1952 the last time they lost their first 2 home games?
1952 was the last time that this team went 2-0 with their first 2 games at home, and the second loss that season was to the Browns.
Okay, that's a good stat. I did my podcast Tuesday, and it's early to do it, and I picked the Browns 24-20, and I just don't know if I've seen anything that's going to make me change that pick. I could certainly see the Browns losing, but I feel like I said, I feel like they're the more talented team, and I feel like there's things in place that would help them get the win, like the injuries and just the momentum from week 1 and all that. So I'm keeping I don't make my final prediction until the day before the game, but right now I'm still thinking the Browns win a close one.
All right, why don't you tell the listeners who probably haven't heard you before, can't be many of them, but what you got going on over at Brown Zone and on the podcast?
Yeah, so podcast, we recap the Bengals game, and then we look ahead to the Steelers game. That's Zone Coverage Podcast. You can find it on brownzone.com or on any of the, Apple Play, that kind of thing. And then today I'm working on a story just about the defense we talked about and the multiple looks and how confusing that can be for the offense. And I'll have a story about the DeJuan Jones, TJ Watt matchup and how important that is. We talked to Jones yesterday. I talked to one of his Ohio State teammates. So that's what I got. That's what I know for sure. And then I'll have some kind of, game preview as we get closer.
And obviously everybody can follow Scott on X/Twitter at Scott Petrak. That's Petrak. Scott, thanks for coming in again on the Terrible Podcast with Alex and Dave, and we'll catch up with you later on in the season when these 2 teams meet again.
Thanks, Scott. Guys. And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And again, our special thanks to Scott Petrak, who you can and should follow on Twitter at Scott Petrak. That's Petrak, writer for the Chronicle Telegram, Medina Gazette, brownzone.com. Check him out. Shout him out on Twitter, as you guys did for Grant Cohn last week, and let him know that you heard him on the podcast, and thank him for his time. Dave, as always, great stuff with Scott.
Certainly is. And everybody should be thinking right now, what would Margie do? Margie, long-time listener of the show, very good about jumping out on Twitter and thanking these beat writers for coming on the show. Because, look, they take 20, 30, minutes, sometimes a little bit longer to sit in with us, and for them to get shout-outs and know that they're heard on Twitter or Facebook or whatever means you can shout them out. It's greatly appreciated, and it lets those guests that we have on know that it's worth their time to come on.
Yeah, and we see your comments on Twitter when you guys tag them and tag the show, so we really appreciate that. It does mean a lot to us, so we thank you for it in advance and for your continued support of the podcast and those who join us on the show. All right, Dave, we will save our Browns preview and picks for Monday, considering the Monday night game. We're going to have something to talk about for that episode, but let's go ahead. And before we make our week 2 picks, hear from our friends over at MyBookie.
Absolutely. And you caught me with my pants down there. Let's see here.
Well, I'll fill in. We pushed, so we tied. It was the +6 with the Thursday night game last night.
Yeah, we were on up. I started off. You wanted the Eagles -6. I jumped on board with you, and about 45 minutes before the game, I was looking at.
You got a hot tip?
Yeah, I thought I did. I switched over to the Vikings +6, and the Vikings sure did literally give that game away in several aspects overall with the turnovers and all. And they ended up making it close and crawling back and ending the game down 6. So we both pushed on that game. Speaking of MyBookie, Alex, has a better You demand perfection, and MyBookie delivers. NFL, college football, and a brand new cash out system give you options to bet and win all season long. The first 2 legs of your parlay hit for you. Cash out early and use the funds on another bet, or let it ride for the chance at a bigger payday with that parlay. Join the MyBookie family for an entire season filled with odds, boosts, free bets, and super contests. This season, MyBookie has a no strings attached cash bonus that lets you deposit and withdraw quick. Use promo code TERRIBLE. That's promo code TERRIBLE at sign up on a deposit of $50 or more, and you can receive up to $200 in cash instantly to your MyBookie account. Bet your deposit amount once and you're ready to cash out at any time. Again, that's promo code TERRIBLE to claim your cash deposit bonus. You can bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. And to get there, go to mybookie.ag. And once again, first time there, signing up, use promo code TERRIBLE to take advantage of this offer.
And we thank MyBookie for their support of the Terrible Podcast. All right, Dave, let's make our picks for the rest of week number 2.
All right, let's do it. And MyBookie, let's start with Baltimore at Cincinnati, where Cincinnati, coming off that smarting from the Browns, are 3-point home favorites against the Ravens.
You know, I picked the Ravens to win the North this year. I know the Bengals are coming off just their most miserable game, but I think they bounce back in a big way. Better weather, Burrow shaking off that rust, the Ravens corner secondary. They're, as typical, Baltimore dealing with injury. Shocker. I'm going to go with Cincinnati in this one.
I'll take the Bengals to bounce back as well, too. I'll lay the 3 points with you. Kansas City on the road against Jacksonville. This should be a fun one. Jaguars at home, plus 3.5.
Yeah, I assume Kelsey's going to be back in this one, and that's going to be so key for those Chiefs, and they're trying to figure things out on their end.
Chris Jones, too.
Yeah, oh, good point. Yeah, that contract, what's with these guys taking these weird incentives? They hold out for a long, long time, rack up the fines Jones did just to get potential incentives. What's the deal with that contract?
Yeah, just want to get on the field, get one season, get another year's pay, and then try to address it again after the season.
I'm going to go KC. They're going to bounce back.
I will as well, too. I'll take KC and a bounce back late at 3.5 points. Seattle Seahawks at the Detroit Lions, the gritty Detroit Lions. Lions laying 4.5.
Yeah, give me the Lions in this one. Yeah, give me Detroit. That run game, the way they use Montgomery and Gibbs and that defensive line, they just play hard. So give me Detroit.
I'll buy it along with you there. I'll lock and step here. I'll lay the 4.5. Indianapolis Colts at the Houston Texans. I won't be watching this one. Texans laying 1 at home against the Colts.
The battle of the rookie quarterbacks, Richardson versus Stroud. Richardson was really impressive. The stats may not be super gaudy, but you look at some of the tape and some of the kind of high-level NFL throws that he made. Give me the Colts.
I'll take the Colts plus 1 on the road as well, too. Chicago Bears at Tampa Bay. What about the Chase Claypool situation? He could be inactive for this game. Buccaneers at home against the Bears. Buccaneers laying 2.5.
It's the way I'm making myself feel better right now. At least there's the Claypool trade. See how long I can ride that bus for. Yeah, this one. I mean, Tampa Bay. Credit to them. They're hanging tough. What's the line again?
2.5. Buccaneers at home laying it.
Yeah. I'm going to go Chicago. Just a gut feeling.
Man, you got my sheet here. I will take the Bears plus 2.5 as well. I think they can win this outright. Raiders at the Bills. Bills laying 8.5 after losing on a walk-off punt return to the Jets. Bills laying 8.5 against the Raiders.
Yeah, it's a pretty big line overall. I mean, Josh Allen, I just don't expect to have all the picks that he did. He's going to bounce back. It's really a bounce back week for those week 1 teams that you thought would come out stronger, like the Bengals, Chiefs, and Bills. So give me Buffalo.
I'll take the Bills to win this, but I think the Raiders cover that 8.5. So I'll take the Raiders 8 plus 8.5. Chargers on the road against the Titans. Titans plus 3 at home.
Ooh, a little surprised by that line overall. I think just too much firepower for the Chargers. They just ran into Tua and that great Dolphins passing attack. So give me the Chargers.
I'll take the Chargers to cover that 3 on the road as well, too. Packers on the road against the Falcons. The Falcons laying 1.5 points at home. Are they for real?
they're kind of like the Titans. They're just this, grinded. I mean, because they're obviously what Arthur Smith is from Tennessee, the OC there formerly. So they're just this gritty, but they just have there's no pass game in Atlanta. I mean, Desmond Ridder had 1 yard at one point early in that game. Give me the Packers.
I'll buy the Falcons one more week to see if they're real. I'll lay the 1.5. 49ers on the road against the Rams. This could get ugly. Rams +7 at home against the 49ers.
Didn't the Rams hold their own in week 1 though? I mean, didn't they win, right? Oh yeah, they destroyed Seattle without Cooper Kupp, and of course Kupp's still out in this game. What's the line again on this one?
7 +7.
Pretty big line overall. But just seeing how good San Francisco is against that Rams defense, I don't think it's that legitimate. Give me the 49ers.
I'll take the 49ers late of 7 as well too. Giants on the road against the Cardinals. Cardinals +4 at home.
Yeah, I know the Giants just the worst week 1 you could envision, somehow even worse than Pittsburgh, but I'm kind of on the bounce back train for week 1 that'll continue. I'm going to take the Giants.
I'll take the Giants late of 4 on the road as well too. Washington Commanders at the Broncos. Broncos laying 3.5.
Russell Wilson did look better. I'm not sure what that Sean Payton effect's going to be long term. I know they didn't get the win in this one, but he certainly was better. Jerry Jeudy's going to probably return in this one. Give me the Broncos.
I'll take the Commanders in an upset, so I want those 3.5 points. Jets on the road against the Cowboys. Cowboys laying 9.
Yeah, dude, that Cowboys pass rush just eaten, and no Rodgers, and the O-line's still questionable. I know it's a big line, but give me Dallas, man.
I'll take Dallas to lay those 9 points as well, too. Miami on the road against the Patriots. The Patriots are underdogs, +3.
Yeah, just that passing attack for Miami, really impressive overall with a healthy Tua. Watch out for Miami. Give me the Dolphins.
I'll take the Dolphins late of 3 against the Patriots as well. Saints on the road against the Carolina Panthers. Panthers +3 at home.
Who's the underdog here?
The underdog is the Panthers at home,
Panthers.
+3.
I got to pick a dog at some point. Give me Carolina.
I'll take the Saints late at 3, and that's the other Monday night game with the Browns and Steelers. We will pick that on the Monday podcast.
All right, sounds good. Dave, let's get to a couple reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, let me pull that up here real quick here in the email machine. We have Bryce says he'll be at the game Monday night. Hope this team shows up. Add in the wacky opening statements from Matt Canada, and this guy is really a mess. Having said that, Alex, we've talked about it before, and I want to see more pistol this week, he says. From your time at camp, what 2 or 3 run concepts do you think this team needs to focus on this week and execute based on the personnel that we have? And number 2 question was, even though Cam is out, could we actually use more 4-man line fronts this week to get 95 and Braden Fehoko on the field for more run support?
Yeah, to answer both, I mean, they ran a bit of pistol, but regardless of whether it's pistol or I-form or shotgun in terms of the run, I mean, just run the ball some this week. So game script just has to be in a position where you can run the ball, but probably inside zone and just kind of their duo man blocking scheme are kind of the core things. They have run some more outside zone as well. Bit of the toss game, but I think, bread and butter of most teams, including Pittsburgh, is inside zone and just, duo man scheme. And then, yeah, I mean, they ran some 4-man fronts against the 49ers. They had some, how many times did they do that? It was several times. So given, the maybe heavier nature of Cleveland's game, although I think Scott made good points. They do want to pass the ball more, and the weather conditions will probably be more conducive to doing that. So we'll see. But Pittsburgh actually had in part of their game plan was to run 4-man fronts against the 49ers.
And as we said earlier in the show, it'll be interesting to see if Fehoko gets the elevation. Do you think he will?
That's been my thought. I mean, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, they don't have to do it, but I just think, when you lose Cam and your run defense is a question, you probably want to have a good run plugger out there. I know he's only going to be a run plugger and not going to offer anything else beyond that. Not a sub-package guy, not a pass rusher, just a pure, 0-1 tech stuffer. But I think you're going to want that in this game.
All right, Cosmo in here from LA. Curious if you guys checked out Prime Vision on Thursday Night Football. It gives you the old all-22 view, and it draws wide receiver routes live. Yeah, look, I know Alex doesn't. Did they have that on the Twitch stream?
They did.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, well, I don't know if they had the whatever he's talking about. I just know they aired it on the game on Twitch.
Okay, so, but if you have Amazon Prime, you can choose the different views to watch, and one of them is an all 22 view with the next gen stats added in there, and that, I mean, it absolutely is fantastic. That's the future. I think at some point in the very near future, that will be offered with every game that you watch on a network. But absolutely, I saw it, and I love watching games through the all 22 view live. Seth writes in, "Hey guys, this offense is coached so poorly, so uninspired. To me, it's hard not to feel like they are the Jeff Fisher Rams, and just desperately need their McVay to open things up. He can't. He says he can't last the season. Look." I get it, and it's going to, the screams are going to get loud. And in fact, if they don't score I forget, I have it somewhere here, 16 or 17 points on offense in this game, then you're going to have a very juicy stats of the weird going back several years to total points scored by this team on offense through the first 2 weeks of a season here as well too. So, I mean, look, history can be changed, but history also right now says that this team will stick with Matt Canada for the season here. But we've beat on this offense already 1 week into the season quite a bit. What do you think about the Jeff Fisher comparison?
Hurts my soul a little bit. I understand the general vibe that he's getting at there. Again, it's week one. I mean, I think week one can be weird. I'm not, personally, I'm not making a pick here. I'm not feeling very confident going into week two, given the circumstances Pittsburgh finds themselves in right now against a tough Browns team with all those injuries. But let's give it another week. Let's give it through Monday before we start tearing this whole thing down.
All right, Dustin Rush writes in, "Dave and I hope all is well. I saw the news about the team bringing Brad Wing in. Gross," he says. "Corliss Waitman is on the Patriots practice squad. The team wanted him back. They couldn't work him out before signing him to the 53. Could they?" He says, I'd certainly take him over Wing. First and foremost, no, you cannot work out a player on another team's practice squad. That answers that. And Dustin, what'd you think about the conversation earlier in this podcast about maybe why Brad Wing specifically was brought in? I think that's a very good observation by our own Joe Clark. And because of being left-footed and this team facing a left-footed kicker, it was probably less about. Now, look, without a doubt, the leash is probably going to get shorter and shorter when it comes to Presley Harvin III. They're not married. If he puts together a couple more performances like he had in week one, he could be out the door. Probably not a Brad Wing, but I think there's a good reason why Brad Wing in particular was brought in.
I still want to know why. Is he punting in another league right now? He hasn't punted in the NFL since, I just looked it up, 2017. Is he in the USFL or one of those? He is, I guess, right now.
He was with
XFL.
With San Antonio, right?
Yeah, you're right. I was wondering what the story was there, so I was just trying to just figure out where he had been. So yeah, okay, that makes sense. He's punted recently.
And here's another thing: does he still live in Pittsburgh? I don't know.
He might. I mean, he was with San Antonio, so he probably had something down there, but I don't know where he lives, during the off season.
Because
so
that makes it
in the area. Yeah.
Yeah. Probably makes it easier to call him up and say, "Hey, can you get over here this afternoon?" Yeah.
Right. So that again, and I think because again, it was on a Thursday where the team is practicing. If they bring punters in on a Tuesday, where it's the off day, then it's like, okay, that's Presley Harvin alert. And Harvin certainly has to be better, but I think that's a logical explanation for why Wing and why yesterday.
All right, I think I got through all of them, at least what we have here in the new in the email machine. So I think we put how long we run here, Alex, today with everything?
I don't know, 75 minutes or so. Should be good enough for you guys to into the weekend.
All right, something to chew on there. And let's see, Alex, you already kind of identified what your terrible take is this afternoon. We will be back on Monday. We'll get, boy, what do you think about that outside zone that the Browns run? We'll be talking about that, some other things that the Browns do on defense, a full preview of Browns versus Steelers on the Monday morning terrible podcast. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot, follow Alex at Alex_Kozora, follow the show at Terrible Podcast, email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do, want to donate, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button, upright navigational bar. Also, if you'd like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, upright navigational bar. Thank you so much for reading the site, listening to the podcast, interacting on YouTube, or however you interact with us. We certainly do appreciate it. And until Monday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.